Good morning, my friends. It's Sunday, and this is Pat Beaupre Becker, certified weight and life coach, and I'm so happy to be here again today for day 7 of how to stick with your plan. So if you are like myself, over the age of 60, if you have struggled in the past with yo-yo dieting, where you create a plan, you start to lose a little bit of weight, and then you have all these great reasons why you can't succeed, can't stick to it, and then you end up gaining all your weight back, you're in the right place, because I want to help you to actually stick to your plan. And the things that I have learned in my practice is working with hundreds of women is the kinds of obstacles we put in our own way, and also the way we can use brain science and all of the information that we now know about how our brains work, what our motivations, how we need to motivate ourselves. There's so much incredible information out there, so that's what I want to share with you today. So day 7, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about excuses. So if your brain is a brain, you are an excuse-making machine, right? And even though I don't necessarily make excuses about food anymore, my brain makes lots of excuses about scheduling, planning, and I am organizing. These are the things that I make lots of excuses for, and that I am using the tools that I'm going to share with you today to kind of beat my own brain, in a sense, like trick it into understanding the best way to think about this problem in order to overcome it, in order to almost like a brain hacking. So I want to share with you today about excuses. One of the most interesting things when you get to be over 60, and quite often many of my clients come to me because they have a diagnosis. Their doctor tells them they have to lose weight. Their doctor tells them, you know, you want to see more of me, or do you want to see more of your children? And so with that information, you would think that someone would automatically want to take their health in their hands. But I have to say that not all, but some people that do end up talking with me, and their excuse, and I say excuse because it doesn't make a lot of sense, is that they don't want to, it's not the right time, or they're too old, or perhaps they're thinking, I'm afraid to fail. So what they do is they give themselves all these excuses and obstacles before they even give themselves the chance to succeed. So I find that very sad, but I love working with women who are ready to change and who have already decided they're going to do their best. Even doesn't mean they're going to be perfect, because there is no such thing as perfection. At least in my opinion, in my life, there has never been any perfection, and any trying to get to perfection has only twisted myself up in a ball and not giving me the resources to actually do a good job at what it is that I need to do. And when I'm trying to be so perfect, and then when I make a mistake, I want to give up altogether, that is absolutely not helpful. So what we want to do is we want to look at your brain and what is actually an excuse, right? So an excuse is really a thought. It's a rationalization that we make to ourselves about people, events, circumstances, because basically we want to justify something we don't do, or something we did, and that maybe we didn't want to do originally. So we have an excuse, and we end up blaming our internal problems on an external situation. Now, this is really crucial to know, because one of the things that I teach people and teach my clients is how to take 100% responsibility for their lives. And especially as women, and women of a certain age, and 60 plus, we have come through many different kinds of beliefs and teachings, and we've seen many changes in the world, right, up until this time. And yet one of the things that we know is that there is only so much more time, and if we want to succeed, we have to take responsibility for ourselves. No one else is going to do it, and the truth is, why should anyone else do it? Who would be the best person for the job to take care of ourselves? We're the ones who know what we need, who know what we like. Now, of course, we need support. And that's why I'm here, right? I help my clients by really working with them to understand their brain, to see what their body requires, how to get nutrients in their body, how to feel better, and how to invest in their own welfare, in their own best interest. And that is what taking 100% responsibility means, right? We think if we take care of everybody else, we take care of the kids, we take care of our grandkids, and by taking care of everyone else, somehow we think we are, I don't know, maybe we think we're doing good, we're spiritually above, or we're, I don't know, putting in points to get to heaven. But the point is if you don't take care of yourself, it's just like that overused explanation. You have to put your oxygen mask on in order to help the people around you. And that's why I've said this before, is that I discover when people get healthy, when women take their responsibility for their own lives, their life gets a hell of a lot better. It gets more fun, it gets more, they have more purpose, they discover purpose because their focus is no longer on what am I going to eat today? How much do I weigh? What does my stomach look like? Will I look good in those pants? How much if I eat this, then do I get to, how much do I have to work out? All of the chatter that goes on in our heads, and then that self-criticism that we have. So if you can become aware of the excuses that you make and call them for what they are, that is the beginning of taking the brain's natural inclination to make excuses and challenging it, right? Because remember, what we want to do is we want to engage and make sure that that CEO of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, comes to work every day. We want to make sure that that person in charge of our brain is actually doing a good job and is worth the investment of our life. So I think a big part of another reason what I see a lot of women who come to me for weight loss, initially, they have a lot of fear. And I think, so it's their fear of failure, fear of being embarrassed, some fear of success, fear of looking good, right? Fear of getting attention. How many women who have been overweight their whole life, they have no, it would be like a total identity change in order to lose that weight. And there's a lot of fears associated with that. If there's been traumatic experiences based on your body, especially for a lot of women who got a lot of attention, then perhaps they don't want to, they don't know what's going to happen when they lose weight and they become a slimmer version of themselves. And then, of course, fear of taking responsibility, fear of not having the confidence to succeed, a big one, and not having the resources. So the thing about fear that's so interesting is, what is fear? Now, some people love fear, right? There's a whole industries built around fear. All of the advertisements for horror movies that happen on TV when I'm watching a pleasant movie or a pleasant show really irritate me, because I don't want to see that stuff. I do not like that kind of fear. But many people love fear. They love roller coaster rides. They go to horror movies, and they love that feeling of fear in their body. Now, it's interesting because if you think about it, the vibration of fear in your body quite often is very close to the same vibration in your body of excitement. So what's the difference between fear and excitement? It's thoughts, right? So thoughts that you create about a situation which create that response, that fear response in your body. So what we want to do is, again, we want to look at what it is we're trying to accomplish. So here we have a plan. We want to stick to our plan. And the question is, if you're afraid of failing, so what if you fail? It doesn't mean that you have to give up. Remember that every day, especially when I work with my clients, we're talking about building on habits, little changes, day after day after day. And when you create a new habit, then that habit is effortless, and it just is part of who you are and what you do. But that takes a little bit of time to get there. So if you can make a mistake and you just come back the next day and you just keep working towards it. It's the image of the baby. You know, if the baby stopped trying when they fell, they wouldn't be walking, and yet we're all walking, right? So how many of us have tried over and over and over again, and yet as we become older, we have this fear of failing. And so question your brain. This is where, again, we take that CEO and we say, okay, you're in charge, and the questions you want to ask is, so what if you fail? We know from so much writing now that brilliant people, Thomas Edison, Einstein, they failed consistently. They looked at failure as a way to move ahead. So for them, failure was actually getting them closer to success. Failure was they observed what didn't work, and so they gave them another opportunity to try something different. So the brilliant thing about all of the tools that I'm teaching you is these have been proven. They do work. Now you have to pick and choose which ones work for you, which is your fear, which is your greatest fear, or what is your greatest excuse. So I think the other thing is, what do we make it mean about ourselves, right? So what if we make a mistake? If we're afraid of being embarrassed, we make being embarrassed mean the biggest, most horrible, like it's the monster in the room, right? And what is it? It's really just a thought and a vibration in your body. So want to really challenge that you can learn that even if you're afraid of something, it doesn't mean you can't do it. Right? So you can actually learn how to have that fear, that vibration in your body, and still achieve what you want to achieve. Not trying to erase that fear, because the fear is not going to go away. I love the thoughts of they talk about courage. Courage doesn't feel good. People think courage feels good, but courage doesn't feel good because courage can only happen in the presence of fear. So if you're feeling fear, that's not such a great feeling. So applying courage doesn't happen when you're feeling good, right? Courage is a discomfort, but with courage, you get to the next step. So how can you help yourself, help your brain focus in a different way on your excuse making? So I like to look at the brain and see what is the question that you're asking. There's a good question and there's a more helpful question. So if you can ask yourself, instead of asking yourself, what if I fail? How about if you ask yourself, how can I learn new techniques to stick to my plan? One new technique just for one more day. That question will set your brain to looking for a different kind of answer, and it will give you a more positive emotion, and from that emotion you're going to take a more positive step towards doing something different in your life. So the other thing, it's always, awareness is always crucial. So ask yourself, and maybe I would get a piece of paper and write down these questions, and I'll post them in the Facebook so you don't have to actually write them down, but you can start writing them down. So the question is, what excuses do I tend to make? If you can think about that and observe, even if you observe in the next week, what are the excuses I tend to make? What am I settling for? Like by using those excuses, what do I not get in my life? And why am I making these excuses? Is it that fear? Like what's at the bottom of making my excuses? So this is the job of the CEO. It's like, let's understand what the problem is so we can solve it. And then I want you to create a list of the consequences that happen as a result of the circumstances. So as a result of not sticking to your plan, what are the consequences? I know for me, the consequence of overeating and bloating, and I remember my mom's big excuse, which I thought was just so interesting, is that she was diabetic and she was gaining weight, and it was pretty clear that she needed to adapt her diet to give up eating sugars and flours and processed food. And what she felt really truly, what she really believed, was that because of her personality, she would say, it's my personality, that's why I have to have gravy, right? So this is just a thought. It's an excuse, and it's a thought that did not serve her, and it was something that could easily be challenged. But the only way to challenge it is to look at it, is to ask your brain to be to look at its executive function, right? To be a responsible adult. Let's look at this and let's see, if we want to achieve a goal, we have to do things differently. And if we're not doing things differently, how can we help ourselves to take a different tactic? Because if your brain is making excuses, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. Nothing's gone wrong. This is what your brain does. It's working 100%. And so that's really also important, not to judge yourself because you have made excuses up until this point. So once you make this list of your excuses and why you make excuses and the consequences, then you want to look at how does that excuse prevent you from moving forward? How does it prevent you from reaching your goal? And how does it cripple your ability to move forward? So once you have all this information, you can then look at it, and then you can say, you can challenge yourself to do something a little bit different. Because I think that when we understand how the brain works, and when we understand even like what an excuse is, and we realize it's just a thought in our head and a vibration in our body, and that's all it is. And we are doing this over and over and over again. So you can have a thought, you can look at it, you don't have to act on it. You can have this vibration, say, of fear or lack of confidence, and it doesn't mean you have to do nothing. You can feel it and move on. You can challenge your brain. So I think that the reason to do this mostly is because it's really worth it. Because I'm telling you that when you get to relieve yourself of weight as a problem, you're going to have a lot more fun in your life. You may have a lot more problems, but they're going to be different problems. They're going to be different goals you're going to get to set in your life. And it's really going to be worth it because you're going to feel better, you're going to live longer, you're going to be a great example to the people around you. So I really hope that you can look at these excuses. I'll post in Facebook, and if you want to, reply below and let us know what your favorite excuse is and how you might ask a different question so that you can change that excuse. Let's share that information down on in Facebook. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you the second half of my little morning is I want to talk about preparation. So one of the things that's really important to succeeding in your goal is to prepare. And I know this is kind of a simple thing, but I wanted to share with you Tupperware. Now, I used to use plastic Tupperware and because I microwave my food a lot, a friend of mine shared with me the information about plastic and having your food in plastic, how the plastic and the chemicals leach into your food. So I reluctantly, slowly changed, and now I have glass Tupperware. And I have to say, I do love it because you can get this Tupperware. I actually bought mine at Costco where I get a lot of my stuff. It comes in different sizes. And so if you have food that is left over, and let's see, I've got, oh, I forgot to do my little thing here. Day 7, excuses. Okay, and we're already on to the second part. So for instance, I know this seems very silly and very simple, but it does make a difference to be prepared. So that here is my leftovers. We made some ratatouille last night, and now we have these leftovers, and this is where I make my meals, right? I open them up, I take my plate out, and I measure it out, and there's my food. So really important to be prepared. And I think that having the glass Tupperware is really convenient and easier to wash, because I know I've had those plastic where you go to wash it, and if you've had anything with tomato sauce in it or anything with oil, it's really hard to clean. So I highly recommend that you be prepared to travel, or if you're going to work and you want to prepare your lunch, you have enough of these on hand, organized. Here's how we do it. We have all the tops organized, right? Other people do it a little bit differently, but I highly recommend that you get yourself a good set of glass Tupperware so that you have it on hand in order to be prepared, to travel, to make a meal, to store your food. It's really, really great to have the glass. They wash really easily. And they come in lots of different sizes. I actually have probably 2 sets because I really do use them all the time. And then quickly, I wanted to do one other thing, and I wanted to just talk about cookbooks. Now, you know that I don't really Hi, Stacy. I don't really I'm not really a cook, although I cook. And yesterday was a perfect example. We were making the ratatouille and my husband is like following the recipe directions. And I'm like, what? Come on, we just have to make it. We don't have those tomatoes. Let's use these tomatoes. And he's he likes to follow the directions exactly. So that's why I'm not really a good cook. I don't really follow directions. But if you do want recipes, I wanted to talk about this one cookbook by Dr. Mark Hyman. It's actually an older cookbook, but it's when I first really started looking at cooking without flour and sugar, and this book was really helpful. There was a couple of recipes in there that I really liked, some fish, different ways of cooking that were very helpful. So if you are interested, there's lots of books, cookbooks on paleo cooking. I have, and then we have this is more Crazy Sexy Kitchen, which has a lot more plant-based recipes. I would recommend that. And then there's a new one called Sugar Detox Me. Sugar Detox Me, yeah. So this is, again, simple recipes that you can follow in order to have the kind of meals that are going to support you and your family. And they're pretty simple. Once you learn to use spices, and I'll be doing a thing on spices as part of the 14-day, but once you get to use different spices, you can have you can take 3 different kinds of food, let's say chicken and broccoli, and let's say you're doing grains and you would maybe have brown rice. Well, with a different spice, you can totally change that meal so that it's simple, but maybe it's got a Mexican flavor with it, or maybe it has an Indian spice. You can do blends, you can create your own blends. I do recommend always looking at the ingredients on the blends, because it is amazing that a lot of these blends have sugar in them because they want you to like the taste and they make it taste better. So recently when I was visiting with my brother and we made taco, and we just took the taco seasoning. So the plant-based cookbook is by someone, Stacy's asking. So it's Chris Carr, and it's called Crazy Sexy Kitchen. That's a good one to use. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's the one. So anyway, I hope that you guys will look at your excuses, right? Excuses do not help you, and it is actually fun because the kinds of excuses that we make are pretty interesting. There's always the excuse of the dog ate my homework, right? So we kind of do that to ourselves, and we want to, again, take charge of our life by using our prefrontal cortex and calling out by looking at what it is, becoming aware of how we think, of the vibrations in our body, and how, because of that vibration, like that sense of fear, what we give up because we're not willing to feel that. So I'll talk to you tomorrow, and I have an announcement coming up. We're going to do, I'm going to be having a new program opening up soon in November, and I want to tell you all about, and we're going to have a webinar class as well, a free training. So I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, and have a wonderful Sunday. And again, Beaupre Becker, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.